Yeah, kia ora mai tātou, mihi nui ki te hui hui nei. I've watched them run through and you get up to 16 claps, so I thought I had a whole lot longer. So I'm going to talk tonight about technology business, and I guess I've been a technology entrepreneur for roughly 20 years, which seems extraordinary. 20 years ago, being 20 years older seemed kind of hard to imagine. And for those of you who don't know me, my alter ego online is known as Alpha Monkey. You know, there's a few of them in the room who know me as Alpha. And this is Einstein, and a couple of things about Einstein basically was, you know, some of you know he was homeschooled, and if you don't, you should. And I like a quote from Mark Twain, which is, "I never let my education get in the way of anything I know." And I guess like when we look at things often, and I got into the technology business, I was really encouraged to think about technology being all about the technology. Just realised I haven't set my timer. And so all about the technology, and often in technology businesses we think we have to differentiate on the technology. And so we're encouraged to create better and better technology all the time. And in my experience, and I've run a bunch of software companies now, and I've done a lot of tech turnaround, and I've just been a year here at Creative HQ, which is Wellington's incubator, helping start up technology companies. And what I would say is that the last thing that a technology company should think about is its technology. And often when I first started saying that to people, they'd go, "Oh no." You know, and I run a virtual world, and most people over about 20 look at me like they have no idea what I'm talking about. And last night, I actually showed someone our Wordle, who didn't seem to understand why you would even want a Wordle, and I discovered that our 5th most commonly used word is LOL. You'll be pleased to know that my 4th most commonly used word on Twitter is ROFL, and I think about the second was GTG. Okay, so for those of you who kind of have no idea what I'm talking about, I have roughly 2,500 boys follow me on Twitter. And for those of you who think that sounds creepy, it's not. And I've had to start a second Twitter address so that I can talk to their parents and keep them in touch with what we're on about. And in the virtual world business, people are constantly blathering onto me about our 2D or our 3D fully customizable platform. And they go on and on and on about how cool their virtual world platform is. And I guess for me, I look at it and I go, actually, the differentiation isn't in the technology. The differentiation we bring to the businesses we create is the differentiation caused through the human heart. And what this picture is behind me is some fan art that one of our members sent, and it's pictures of all of my team as monkeys. And I run a business which is an online virtual world. I was trying to explain today, someone tried to hack us, and the bank was going to get me a new credit card in 5 to 7 working days, which was roughly 10 days from now. And I said, you know, you do understand I run a 24/7 global business. If my servers go down tomorrow, I can't wait 10 days to get a new credit card number in order to get some more servers back online. And so what's happening here is that we can run these very global, very interesting businesses from here in New Zealand that have, for us, we have 20,000 monkeys online, most of them centered in the US, even though we run it from here. And so for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about so far, we run a virtual world where kids can come and hang out and be monkeys. And what they do is that instead of wanting to preach about the environment to people, we decided that what if we created a world right from the beginning where the assumption was that people were generous, people wanted to create community, that they created sustainable lives around them, and they wanted to hang out and have fun. And if we assumed right from the beginning that what kids wanted to do were those things, we wouldn't need to preach at them. We wouldn't need to write big, long texts about how sustainability works. For those of you who ever tried to play any environmental games online, they're usually really boring lesson plans that some teacher has made slightly more interactive, and there's a quiz at the end. Yeah, I'm serious. And I go, ugh, you know, this is so boring. And so in our world, you get to hang out and dress up as a monkey, get to build a cool tree house. Now you'll notice here that if you don't do your recycling, this one's a good monkey and has emptied their bin. But up here, your recycling bin starts to overflow and your friends come around and go, man, your tree house is a mess. And social pressure is an amazing thing. And over here is a turbine, and you'll see it's a wind turbine. And if you don't go out and play some games that help you to collect wind, which for boys is kind of fun, then you won't get the power on and you won't be able to see inside your treehouse. Now, we don't write a lesson plan then about wind power. We go, you can quickly figure it out that the lights don't come on if you don't have any power. And how are you going to get power? You're going to have to get your windmill turning. And that is how we really do it in the real world. We don't sit around. I don't know how many of you ever read the manual, but I only read the manual if I can't figure it out. And so one of the biggest things for me about finding that, what is the access to the human heart, is deciding what it is that inspires you. And when I was at university, I studied a mixture of environmental planning and public health. And back then, 25 years ago at university, we started studying climate change, and it seemed a very long time off. And in 2007, I sat down in a theatre where sat 12 people, and I watched the Inconvenient Truth movie. Has anyone seen this movie? And you think, oh my God, you know, a film of someone giving a PowerPoint presentation. How tragic could that be? And then you hear, it's not only that, it's like the 2000th time he's given this PowerPoint presentation. And yet I sat there on the edge of my seat going, you know, I studied this at university 25 years ago, and it seemed vaguely interesting. And I had one of those moments where I went, you know, it's actually really urgent. I don't have another 25 years to wait around and think about it. And around the same time, my daughter who's here tonight, I have children of two different generations. I have a son who's going to be 28 next month, and a daughter who's going to be 10 this month. And when he was growing up, the hottest technology in our house was the modem that was bigger than this lectern, and the video player, which I truly never bothered to learn how to use because I had a kid. And when Gracie was little, she woke me up when she was 3. Mom, the wireless is down, right? And that was a revelation to me that we were in a different generation. And here, when we talk about digital natives, you know, there is this entire generation now that the question of, you know, did you have an iPhone when you were a kid is as relevant as were there cars? And so it's a whole different world. And what's cool about that is that we can create stuff in this new world that thinks about the world a bit differently. So over here, this is one of my heroes, David Suzuki. If there are Canadians in the house, they always scream, so I know there's no Canadians. He's the father of Canadian environmentalism. And I got to have dinner with him in Nashville last year. And I said, would you come to Australia and do a seminar? And he looked at me like I was a complete moron. And he's like, no, doing everything I can to reduce my carbon footprint, but I can come by video. And he did, and we had an extraordinary event. Guy next to him is John Doerr. John Doerr is a venture capitalist who had a rude awakening when his teenage daughter, as only teenage daughters can, said to him that she was embarrassed to be his, that he had basically made his money screwing up the planet, and it was about time he did something else. And he's put the money up for Inconvenient Youth, which I help, and also behind the Climate Project in the States, who I trained with in 2007, and since then I've been presented, over 30 times I've presented Al Gore's slideshow. The guy next to him is Paul Hawken, who is also now in the venture capital business and working on sustainable investment, and of course, Al. And these people inspire me, and when I was in Hawaii on holiday with Grace a couple of years ago, I had this realization that along with that, if I didn't start working on it now, the things that I had always taken for granted, and I'm a swimmer and a surfer and a kayaker, and I've spent my whole life kind of underwater if I could, and the reefs that I love and the places that I love to go are going to be gone if we don't do something about them. And a lot of kids in America particularly don't have access to nature the way we did. So we've created a game here that is one where you can learn about the reef in a long-term way. You have to clean it up over a long, persistent process. And if you keep cleaning it up, then over days and weeks, new animals come and new flora and fauna move into your lagoon. It's not about instant something just happening. And when kids get turtles, it's like they all tweet it. It's very exciting. And a couple of years ago, Grace and I were kayaking, and this is Grace in the front of my kayak here, and behind us you'll see a glacier, and it's the terminal face of the Muller Glacier down south. And what I find really interesting about this, it's where Aoraki Mount Cook meets Mount Sefton. And if any of you have spent time in the Southern Alps, which is, you know, I spend my winters in the snow if I can, because I can't swim in the winter here. And behind us, this terminal face is melting at a massive rate. And if you look at the ice behind us, it kind of just looks like it's got some stripes in it. And climatologists and glacier scientists can look at that ice and they can say, wow, each one of those layers is a year where snow fell and ice formed, and we can tell what the climate was like in the years that this glacier was forming. And this glacier back here in kind of my backyard, virtually, it took 5,000 years. There's 5,000 layers of ice in this glacier. And 17 years ago, it started to melt. And it started to melt at a really small rate, to the point where there was a puddle about 15 years ago. And last summer, we spent 3 hours kayaking on it. And that scares me. And what happens is these changes around us are very small, and so we don't notice them. We don't notice them sometimes until it's 17 years, and suddenly there's a kayak I can spend 3 hours on. And those changes are happening around us all of the time, but we're often not open to seeing that they're there. I guess along with keeping our eyes open is also remembering to find joy. And the simplest, smallest things can find joy in our lives. I have the power to make it rain. And I can type "go bananas" and bury kids under a banana pile. And it's the simplest little things. And yet often we try to create really big meaning out of stuff. But the simplest little things are the things that create joy. And what we want is we want community. When I look at the difference between my childhood and my children's childhood, one of the big things I see is the isolation of our lives. And part of that is that as we become more affluent, become wealthier, we want more. If I could have a 25-meter pool in my backyard, I probably would. And yet those are things that once upon a time were entirely public goods. And when I look at the big screen TV in our living room, I think, you know, when I was a kid, we used to really love going to the movies. And I still like going to the movies, but what happens is I don't do it anywhere like I used to. We've kind of privatized the movie-going experience and brought it into our home. We've privatized the exercise experience and brought it into our home. And we do that because we have choices that we can make. But it's also making our lives more and more private in many ways. And the kids that I engage with online, they're looking for community. They're looking for shared experiences. And so to me, the rise of social networking, the rise of Facebook, the rise of Twitter, and all of these other sites, even our own Mini Monos site, is because they want to connect. And what amazes me is that when you read the research on parents, parents truly believe they know what their children are doing online. And all of the research where parents are watched is that they have absolutely no idea. That they're in another room, that they're busy dealing with other children, whatever it is. And I'll be on Twitter and some kid will be saying, hey, I'm trying to create a twibbon, can someone help me? And I might go, hey, what about asking your mom? Oh no, she's not very computery, you know. And so you find that the gap between what the kids are doing and what they're able to do and what their parents know about is getting huge. And so the communication often is not as good as it should be. We created some multiplayer games finally, because what we discovered that the kids were asking for ways of collaborating. And what we found very interesting is we launched a game recently, it's a kung fu game, that they gamed the game. They decided it takes roughly 16 hours of gameplay to win this game. And what they did is that they got together on Twitter and decided that one particular monkey would be the first one to win. And then he enrolled the entire community in helping him win first. Isn't that extraordinary? And so we call this metagaming. And what happens is you have to create the opportunity in games for people to create their own game, not just the game that I might want to design as a game designer. And so for me, what I loved was that they actually made it more collaborative than we had ever designed it to do, and the game became gaming us. This is just a flash from our Twitter stream this afternoon, but it really made me laugh. Kids are having a twibbon competition with each other. And so they're also kind of trying to decide, they're running a bunch of polls about which virtual world is the best, and then they argue with each other about which one is. And, you know, some days Club Penguin beats us, some days we beat Club Penguin. But for us, it's really about how do we continue to help kids build those communities around them. One day we were on TwitCam, and we do TwitCam Tuesdays. So every Tuesday we go on TwitCam and we do a live Twit stream on TwitCam with kids. We now get about 300 kids turn up. And one day they lined us up and they said, now the entire team was together for a team meeting. Could you all go online? We have a surprise for you. And then they gave us an address and they wanted us to be on TwitCam when we opened it. And this is what they'd made us. And they had gone on and grabbed, screen captured, all of our avatars for everyone that was at this meeting. And then this group of kids collaborated around the world. And these kids are everywhere from Manila to New Zealand to Texas. And they collaborated in about an hour and a half and created this picture and then sent it to us as a surprise and called March 24th Mini Monos Staff Appreciation Day. When I cried on screen, there was great delight. To us, we're kind of thinking about how can we be like the cherry tree, and what we mean by that is how do we grow an ecosystem around us and not just be a business that takes from the ecosystem. How do we build? How do we feed our community? How does the community feed us? And kind of line with that, we have what we call our blog roll of honor and awesomeness. We have 39 dedicated fan sites that are run by over 150 kids collaborating together. We didn't start this, they came to us, and we now put them on our blog and honor them for what they're doing. And we're talking here about, mostly boys, 9 to 12, they totally rock, We've now started Mini Monos TV, and so every second week we put out a new TV episode, and they send us in questions, and we answer our questions, and we feature them. And this week what they really loved was that we featured the office garden, which is looking slightly tragic now that it's autumn, but they love the fact that we have a roof garden on our office. And they submit fan art, and they run now 3 kids around the world, one here, one in California, and one in Texas, who have never met, run a wiki. This wiki now has thousands of pieces of fan art that kids have created and submitted. We have nothing to do with this. It's run by kids, for kids, and they run competitions. They save up and give away memberships to other kids. It's like I cry almost every day at something extraordinary that our customers have done. And when I look at that, I think, the cynicism in so many of our competitors, which is they see kids as consumers, they figure out how to brand something at them, they figure out how to sell them some piece of crappy plastic that was made in a factory somewhere, and the cynicism of that appalls me. And instead, you can create relationships like this, where kids around the world just want to be part of something amazing and want to tell you what we're doing. So we don't encourage them to be on Facebook because most of them are under 13, but their parents are, and we have over 1,000 fans between our page and our Facebook site. We did something which really shocked me recently, which is that the kids, we got together, I did a blog on palm oil, and they decided that we would adopt an orangutan, and we made them choose between 2 orangutans. It just about broke my heart, so we're now adopting 2 orangutans. But they put up a poll, and they collaborated with each other to make sure that the votes were always 50-50, so that we would never have to choose, which was extraordinary. So the relationships are everything, and I want to stress this. It's not only okay to love your customers, it is necessary. And what happens if you do that, you wake up every day and you know you're doing your life's work. And when you're doing your life's work, suddenly it becomes effortless. And I think that's when I come back to technology or why. And if I had to make a choice, I'll come back to the why every time, because it's the why that sustains us. It's the why that means we will find our way through the technology regardless of what. And so if what we're trying to do is to create a life that is powerful, then it's the human connections that matter. It's not the technology that matters. It doesn't matter whether this is done on a 2D or a 3D platform. It doesn't matter whether it's a .NET or a C++ or what it is. It's the power of the relationships that matter. And I'm going to leave you with one last little thing, which was our first party. Sorry. The kids blogged this party, and the thing they loved the most was that they crashed the server. And they tweeted and blogged about how awesome it was to crash the server. So we now have 3 servers, and it's much more of a challenge to do it. But I want to leave you with that last thought, that the differentiator is what is in the heart and what it is that you want to create. What is the kind of world we want to live in? And this new generation that are my customers, who are pretty much all under 12, are phenomenal. And what we do, I think, often is we unteach them the relationship with the human heart. And so the longer we can maintain that, the better it has to be for all of us. Thank you.